Hi, welcome to Positively Sparking, a podcast on internet marketing, online productivity, and business. Today I'm with James Rose, co-founder of Content Snare, and we're going to be chatting through how learning to systemize his business led James to the creation of this great app for web designers and developers. Hey James, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Phil, good to be here.
Well, thank you for taking some time out. I know it's quite late in the evening for you, but we appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no, it's good. Thanks for having me on. I love doing this kind of thing. It's good to meet you.
And likewise. So, James, for those of us who don't know you, haven't had the pleasure of your company yet, tell us who you are and what you do.
Right. So, I've been that sort of traditional entrepreneur that tries to chase every shiny object that's presented to them. So, in fact, my bookkeeper wrote a blog post that mentioned me the other day, and he listed all the things, and I do it, and it really hit home. I was like, man, he's right. I do way too much stuff. But I actually just sold a business the other day to help focus on what I am doing, which is Content Snare, which is a tool for web designers to get content out of their clients. And we also have a software development business that sort of feeds that.
Very good. So you're a serial entrepreneur. Just sold a business recently, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And this is all about focusing down on Content Snare. So just before we go into that, I'm curious, how many things did you count up in the blog post about you from your accountant?
Oh, do we have to talk about that? So we have 3 software products. One of the one which has just got sold, and another one that I want to line up for sale next. And then we've got a web design business, which is also slowly winding up, and this software development business that I was talking about. So, yeah, we used to do a bit of marketing and marketing automation as well, but thankfully I tore that down a little while ago.
You're a busy man. You must be a busy man with lots of energy with all that on.
Yeah, well, and team as well, like I've got surrounded ourselves with some pretty good people that handle a lot of the grunt, the stuff that takes a lot of time. So it's far from being just me.
Well, it's great to have a good team, and even more so now that you want to give Content Snare real focus. So tell us all about Content Snare and particularly how it began.
Yeah, so we originally got into web design kind of by accident because we started in software and we started doing web design because so many people sort of complained about their websites or even their web developers, and we thought, you know what, we'll just get into that space and see where it takes us. Always with the intention of if we found an idea or something that we could build, then we'd jump on it. And the first of those was an accounting product, actually, which is the one that just got sold. But then in the end, we found some holes in our own process that we couldn't really fix with any tools that we found out there. And that's kind of how we stumbled onto Content Snare, where I ended up talking to quite a lot of local designers, and it turned out they all had the same problem. So that's basically how it happened. That's how it started.
Wow. So you began, you've got your own web design development business. You've identified this problem for yourself all around content, and you make that the focus of another business. That's very much an entrepreneurial thing to do. And James,
shiny object syndrome.
Shiny objects, indeed. So given that, you've mentioned that word a couple of times now, shiny objects.
Yeah.
But you've also mentioned that word process. And we had a great podcast guest about a month ago, Richard Tubb, who is all about systemizing and processing a business. Are you a similar type of entrepreneur? Or are you more the shiny object type that just runs after those?
Look, I'm somewhere in the middle. I sort of have come to terms with the fact that I'm never going to get over shiny object syndrome. It's kind of like an addict finding different ways to deal with it. But for me, it's the same with I think a lot of entrepreneurs suffer from that, right? And for me, the way I deal with it is just kind of write down my ideas somewhere that I know I'll never look at them again, but it's at least they're on paper, so it feels like I've done something with them. But I think process is absolutely key too. So it almost good process almost allows you to have bright shiny object syndrome, because if you can turn one business into, sort out your processes like I did with the web design business. I mean, that's still running, but I don't really do much other than get leads in through my existing networks now, because the processes that we've developed for our team of developers, designers, and a project manager, they can take a quote and run with it and make it happen. And I can be involved in about 5 emails over the life cycle of a project because those processes are in place.
Amazing stuff. And I'm just like you. I'm a kind of shiny object magnet, really. And I've had to learn about systems and process. Really, they're the development of a business, aren't they? It's what turns an idea into a business.
Totally.
So tell us about content. Why is that the biggest problem in web design and development projects?
I think that's actually a very hard question to answer, because I know it is a problem. Why it's a problem, I'm not so sure yet. Because, like I said, I spoke to so many different web designers and developers that all had the exact same problem. And some of the frustration that comes through in the way they speak about it makes it pretty obvious it's a big problem. But I think it's because this is just a theory of mine where, a client might sign up. They've done all this work to choose the web designer they're going to do, and they've been through the quote process, and they've made this big decision. And then suddenly, bam, they're hit with this, like, all this content that they have to provide. And I don't think they account for it. They think they've made the decision already. This is just, like I said, this is just a theory, but, the real thing could just be that they're really busy, like all of us, and they don't have time to provide content. So then that's kind of what we did with Content Snare, is to make it easier for them so that they can make the time. If something, they have to spend hours understanding something before they can finally get around to creating the content, that's a lot of wasted time, versus, if it's made easy for them, it sort of shaves a lot of time off for them, encourages them to do it.
Definitely so. So it becomes almost a daunting thing for the client. Once they've signed the deal, now I've got to write all about myself. Yeah, a tough thing to do.
Yeah, indeed.
So you mentioned there that your tool, Content Snare, gives the client the time. So tell us a bit more about that and why that's part of how web designers and developers can fix this problem of content provision.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest problems because we did exactly the same thing, and that's how I sort of identified this problem in the beginning, is that we would simply dump this big thing onto a client once they've signed the contract. The contract says, you'll provide the content, blah, blah, blah. But they don't realize how much goes into it. And then you go, okay, here's all the stuff you need to give us. And if that doesn't have a good structure or a format to it, it's super overwhelming. Daunting, I think, was the word you used, which, and that's going to turn people off. Like, it's the same as to-do lists. When you get up each morning, like the hardest one, you kind of shy away from. You try and pick off all the little ones.
So true.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the same thing, right? They're going to look at that and go, oh my gosh, I don't want to do any of that. But I think this is kind of what breaking it up into a logical structure does. The whole, Content Snare is not a complex idea. It's just breaking it down into logical pieces and providing a little bit of instruction along with each piece they need to provide. So if they want, it becomes, instead of one giant daunting task, it's a series of smaller tasks which they can see laid out exactly what they got to do, and they could do maybe one little 5 fields, say, like they've got to give a heading and a subheading. They can chunk it out so that it's not such a daunting task.
That sounds great. So it's breaking down this big kind of thing that you see written down, like you mentioned there, the to-do list every morning. And I don't know about you, but one of the toughest things I find to do is kind of my mileage, my receipts, all of that accounting stuff. I just wish some kind of magical elf existed that could do it for me. But it's not the case. But breaking it down, as you say, that's often the best way to approach a big task. Is to say, okay, let's put this into mini tasks and do 20 minutes a day. And after a week or so, you're a long way on, aren't you? So is that some of the concept of Content Snare? It sort of breaks them down into manageable, easy tasks. So you're turning that daunting task into several easy ones.
Yeah, and you know what? I've sort of not thought about it like that before. You've just prompted me to think about it a bit more, and I'm probably going to use that in my copy now. So,
Well, you're more than welcome. If it's helped you think of something, that's great.
yeah, thank you, Phil.
So you mentioned, content becomes a process there in a web designer and developer's business. It becomes part of the creation of a site and the process that they and the client go through to create that site. What other kinds of processes do you believe a successful web designer developer needs?
Yeah, so everything. Can I say everything? It's there. We could start at the beginning, right? Like the start of the sales life cycle. When someone comes in, it can be as simple as having processes in before you've even got the contract signed, like from standard sort of CRM sales flow where you're going from warm lead or maybe even cold lead, through to initial meeting, and you've had, I don't know, a strategy chat, and you could have like a process there even, right? Which is just a simple sort of sales flow. You could have a process, which I think is important that a lot of people miss out on, which is just a simple sort of CRM implementation for most businesses.
Yeah.
Stepping through to that, there's this client onboarding, and I know Aaron Flynn and Christine Thatcher are really big on. There are a couple of designers out of the States who sort of really focus on that portion of things, where Content Snare kind of comes into that as well, right? Is that because that whole process is getting the ideas out of the client's brain, so that you know what they need or what you should be building them, and then getting the content as well.
Sure.
Yeah, but then we get into the building of the sites, which is it should be broken down to a process, because then you don't have to do it anymore. If you can turn that into a process, then someone else can do it, that's the position I'm in now, right? Where I don't build sites anymore. I have a team, and they follow the standard site setup, and they go through it and they get it done.
Amazing
and then
stuff.
we can go through to quality assurance as well, which I think is one of that's like the end of and this is a big thing I think in the design space that a lot of people miss out on, is because I hear a lot of people complaining about their websites that were built by someone, and it's only ever this like small detail stuff at the end, which could have been fixed by a simple checklist, which is what a process is at its lowest level. If they just ticked off a whole bunch of stuff, then that client would be happy, and that person probably get more referrals out of it rather than them going somewhere else.
Totally true. Yeah. And do you think some of that kind of problem is that people who are web designers and developers and many other businesses, we tend to start something because we enjoy it, because we get a kick out of it, and then to become a business, it got a lot more about it. So I've met a lot of people, I don't know about you, who formed the business because they love something, and because of the business, their love for that thing dies, which is a real shame.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know what the answer for that is, I think you have to have a passion for things, but there are just certain elements of a business that can kill passion. And I think, for example, accounting, you just said it before,
It's
right?
a great one.
Yeah, that's probably just something that someone else has to do. We've got bookkeepers doing all of that now because I hated it. Yeah. It cost us quite a bit of money to get them to do it, but sometimes
life is too short.
Exactly.
Great stuff. So do you believe that with all this systemization that you speak about and recommend that people bring into their business, that enables you to enjoy your business more?
I think so, yeah, especially when it allows delegation. I think that's one of the biggest things with systemization, is that it makes delegation a lot easier, and scaling, building a team and all that sort of fun stuff, and offloading the tasks that you don't want to do. I think that's even one of the things I've read a lot of the outsourcing gurus talk about, is write down a list of the stuff you don't want to be doing and that you shouldn't be doing, and that's what you give to other people.
Totally. So let's talk a bit about that. What tips have you got on recruiting great new team members, because that's a big step. The first time we do that, we're moving from the business being inside our minds to having to come out into the real world and pass on to someone else, as you say, through delegation. So what are your thoughts on that as a process and that as an activity?
Yeah, I think it's very, very difficult. We screwed that up so many times before we found anyone good. And I think the mistake we were making the most in the beginning was probably not being defined enough in what we were hiring for, and then sort of not testing the person for that role. For example, I don't know the best way to describe this, but you come up with all this stuff you want someone to do, but a lot of the times it could be all over the place. You know, if you're trying to get someone to edit videos as well as build a WordPress site, as well as do graphic design, and as well as do data entry, it's kind of, there are superstars out there that can do all that, but they're quite rare. I think really focusing on specific roles, like designer, just designer, or just WordPress developer, or project manager to handle. Once you've got enough people that it's too hard to handle them yourself, you bring in a manager or something like that, and then testing those people as well. So that was a big shift in our business, when I'd go, oh, it's time to hire someone. We're getting too busy. I'm just going to put out a job advert and then try and pick the best person based on gut feeling or something. But it just failed every time. So I started putting in a hell of a lot of work up front to design a test that I would run several people through. So it's something that was relevant to what they would be doing day to day. For example, with project manager or a quality assurance person, I intentionally broke like 3 websites, gave them our checklist for QA, quality checklist, and got them to create a list of everything that was broken based on our checklist.
Great.
And some people just completely failed at it, and so you can scratch them off the list right away. I do paid tests too. Like, a lot of people are really anti non-paid work. That's why I always do a small, maybe 2-3 hour test with all these people. And then it's so easy at that point to just go, well, this person did a really good job. Their communication's good. I'm going to pick them. It makes it so much easier.
Definitely. So I think those are great tips. And, the notion of testing is often driven by, we don't do it because we're driven by need, immediate need. So lots of us will recruit when we absolutely are at roasting point.
Yes.
And it's, it's somehow getting the vision to see that coming, isn't it? And anticipating ahead and trying to take steps to make sure we never reach roasting point, which is difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned some great things there about, how you've changed things in what you do. And I'm just wondering a bit about your world of web design and development. Do you feel it's still growing? Or we have lots of automated tools these days like Shopify and Wix. Do they pose a threat, or are they actually an opportunity?
Yeah, this comes up a lot because I actually run a Facebook group full of web designers, and I see stuff like this come up pretty regularly, and in some other groups as well. This has been happening for a while now. Shopify, Wix, these aren't new tools. Squarespace, I think they service an end of the market that weren't really worth, you're not going to want those guys for business anyway, right? If someone wants to pay $20 a month for a website and do it themselves, they're not going to be a great client anyway. So I don't really see those things as a threat. I see them as a gateway for people to get online with their new businesses. And then later, when they're ready for it, engage a professional to do it. I think it just means that as a service offering, we need to offer more of a strategy layer, actual insight into their business, and rather than just a guy that can build a WordPress site.
Sure.
It needs to be, you need to offer more insight. Like, that's the opportunity there, right? Is to provide more value to the client other than just building a website.
Yeah, I think those are great points. You're right in the sense that people who always want to do things themselves Whether that's because they want to learn these things or whether it's because they want to save money, it's usually one of those two. They're always going to go in that direction. And it means that as a business, you're always competing with whatever they can pay for monthly or buy as an app. But you're also right in that, the great direction to go in for any business is being the best strategic partner. So helping a business shape itself in a bespoke way, which is all about them. And I think I'm sure that's what your Facebook group is all about, is becoming the best web design development choice for whoever you're targeting.
Correct.
All in all. Do lots of your kind of group members target a certain industry? Do you find that web developers do that? Or is
most people don't. Absolutely not. And I think that's a big issue in the space too, like the whole generalist versus specialist thing. It doesn't even have to be an industry. You could specialize in WordPress speed or something, right? Like you could be a guru at converting Squarespace sites to WordPress or something. It doesn't have to be an industry, but most of the people I see, because now that I'm not so much in the design space, I've sort of now talked to a lot of designers instead, and I see who's doing really well, and pretty much everyone that has gotten to what I'd call success quickly has done it through an industry specialization. But like I surveyed people coming into Content Snare when it was pre-launch, just out of curiosity to see who was signing up, and I asked about their niche and specialization, or niche if you're in America. And almost everyone, I think it was 70 to 80%, said they did not have a specialization, which is kind of not good.
I agree. I think you're right. I mean, from a marketing point of view, it's the same. So clients who have a real focus as to who their customer is do better. Even though
it makes it easier to sell, right? It makes it easier to do marketing. It's the same with Content Snare. Content Snare could be used for insurance people. We've had bookkeepers interested, accountants. Could be used for all these people. But if you go to the website, it talks about web agencies, right? Because it's just way easier to talk to that person instead of trying to talk to everybody.
Absolutely. And we have to go for our perfect target market. If other people come along, that's fine. But it's focusing your marketing on where you want to be most. Really. Great stuff. So given what we've been discussing there about, threats and opportunities, specializations, what do you think is coming next for the web design industry?
You know what? I am not one of those types that can see where things are going. I keep my eye on the space, and I don't see anything being catastrophically changing anytime. Not in the next 12 months or so. There's the big shift at the moment is that WordPress is putting in a page builder, so there's all this scare that the page builder industry is going to die, but I don't, even that looks fairly safe for the time being. It's hard to say, everyone's talking about VR being the next big thing. I still think that's a little while away until everyone's going to be wearing, goggles walking around.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a long way off, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm keeping my eye on all this stuff, but I don't think anything's going to be majorly changing in the short term for web design anyway.
Well, which is good, isn't it? That's a message of stability from you there, James.
Yeah.
And what about Content Snare? Where are you going to go next with your platform?
Wherever the users tell us to go, I think. That's what I've learned is that we just cannot make assumptions at all, and we basically have to listen to what the users are saying. Users is such a strange word. What the customers, the clients, I don't know what word. What people are telling us, because we just had a massive, costly exercise for us where people found our app too hard to use, and we sort of had to pull that out of people. No one just came out and told us, but eventually when we worked that out, it started outpouring with all these people finding it confusing, and so we had to go ahead and we had this big planning day of simplifying the app and making it easy to use. And we're about halfway through, not even that, like a third of the way through, and signups have just skyrocketed all of a sudden.
Wow.
So it's just like a lesson in listening to what people want, and doing that. So honestly, I don't even know where I've got all these plans. I've got this like want list and request list, but really we'll finish this simplification, which is probably going to take us another month or two, and then we'll talk to people again and work out what they want next.
The communication, it's such a simple word, but such a hard thing to achieve, isn't it? So
Indeed,
I love
yes.
that story there of people not telling you, and then suddenly this outpouring comes. Once the floodgates are open,
Yeah.
people come and share, and it's so amazing to me how most people are reluctant to give negative feedback.
Oh yeah.
Unless it's on TripAdvisor or somewhere like that, then it's a different ball game, isn't it? But
Totally.
that sharing of great information for you, so you can make what you do so much better, which in turn grows your business. But it's getting through that and trying to get people to feel comfortable sharing whatever they want to share with you.
Absolutely.
So have you got any thoughts on that? How did you achieve that to get beyond the point where people were like, okay, let's just tell him?
Yeah, so it sort of came gradually, like through the Facebook group. I've developed a bit of a relationship with many people there, because it's a bit more personal than just back and forwards emails that you'd get with most software products. We had a sign-ups problem, right? So that was the symptom. We knew something was wrong. We just stagnated for a couple of weeks, and all of a sudden no one was signing up, and we couldn't understand. So I reached out to the group, which were people that I trust, and I actually said, I want you to be brutal with me. Do not hold back. If you don't want to say it in the group, email me here or message me. I'm not going to get hurt feelings, even though I did a little bit. And we had a few people. That was the start of it, right? We had a few people message there, and that's from there. I took it to the email list. I broadcast to everybody who's ever used the app, even from day one, and just said, "Look, I've had an inkling from a couple of people that it's pretty difficult to use. What do you think? I want you to be brutal. Do not hold back." I basically said the same thing, but I said specifically this time, I said people find it confusing, and that's when the floodgates opened. I spent basically half a day reading the responses, categorizing them, and working out what we could do to fix it. And so that wasn't a very fun day, to be honest. Like to read a lot.
Doesn't sound it.
No, to read a lot of responses that are pretty negative. I mean, they weren't all. We had maybe one in 5 were actually quite positive, 1 in 6. But I filtered out all the negative ones and sent them to my business partner. So he had an even worse day. He didn't even get the positives.
You saw only one side.
Yeah.
But poor guy. What was interesting there, though, is that you use that phrase, be brutal. You gave permission for people to really, give to you everything that miffed them off about Content Snare. And maybe that is what it takes, is that we have to invite that negative feedback and to say, look, I'm not going to get offended, even though as you did. But, say, be brutal, go for it.
Absolutely. I think that was a pretty important thing to say, like in hindsight.
Definitely. I think so. And now it's helping you improve your platform.
Indeed.
Despite that, I hope you've recovered from that day.
Yeah, I mean, it took a little while. It did, like maybe a couple of days once we sort of came with a go forward, developed a go forward plan from that. And that actually felt quite positive, once we had that in place and we knew what to do next, because before that we just had no idea. We were sitting there going, why aren't people signing up? We have no idea. What do we do? Do we drive more ads? We just didn't know what the next step was, but that gave us, direction. So it was so much nicer to have that afterwards.
Definitely so. And with that new direction in mind, for anyone who wants to try Content Snare or connect with you, where can we find you online?
Content Snare itself is exactly that on all the everything's the .com, the Twitter, the Facebook. Everything is /contentsnare or contentsnare.com. If you want to hit me up on Twitter, I'm at _Jimmy Rose.
Fantastic stuff. And most of our listeners are in the UK. So for anyone in the UK who wants to meet you, they can do so next month. So tell us a little bit about your trip.
Yes, they can. I'm coming back. This is only the second time I've been in the UK, I think. And that will be for Chris Ducker's event, the Upreneur Summit. So I'm there, I think it's the 8th to the 22nd, and I basically have no plans other than the summit, which is like 3 or 4 days. So I am very keen to travel around and meet up with some people, potentially going to Birmingham, because there's a couple of people there I know. Other than that, I have no plans, and I'm very open to exploring and meeting up with people.
Well, there we go. James needs his diary filling whilst he's in the UK. To see more of this great country we live in, so let's help him do that. It's been so good, James, having you on the podcast. I've learnt a lot myself about you and Content Snare. So any final message you want to give to everybody?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Process.
Process, there we go.
Delegate more. Honestly, delegate more. I just constantly see, which is, part of process, as we talked about, because I see every web designer I talk to is just constantly flat out. So it's just the only way. You have to release some things and get some people involved in your business.
Absolutely so. It's all about creating a business, not a job, isn't it?
Indeed.
And that's a tough thing to do. Great stuff. Well, James, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for staying up a little bit later than you would like to work to speak to us.
Thanks so much for having me, Phil.
My name is Phil Byrne, and I'd like to thank you so much for listening today. I hope you got something really good to take away from this week's episode for you or your business. And you know what? I'd like to give you something more. In fact, I'd like to give you a whole free web marketing pack full of all my latest and best ideas on how you can take your business forward positively online. Download your pack at positivesparks.co.uk/pack. And most of all, guys, look forward to seeing you again next week.